So phase 2. Well, are you going to start off with terms or?
Good call. Yes, I should do that actually. That is the usual way that we get down over here. So at first I didn't think there was going to be that many terms, and there aren't actually, but when I first started this, I didn't really think that basically there'd be any, because these are all relatively known words in the...
Sure.
In the zeitgeist.
If anybody's seen National Treasure.
Exactly. For real, totally. Or the Da Vinci Code. And
the Da Vinci Code, sure.
Had to hear poor Ian McKellen describe how the cup of Christ is much like a vagina, and how they're all bloody, and how he's disgusted by it. It's like, we get it, Ian McKellen, you're gay. You don't like the JJs, I get it.
The penitent man will pass.
So the first term that I got to throw out there is theurgy, from the ancient Greek theurgia, which describes the practice of rituals, sometimes seen as magical in nature, performed with the intention of invoking the action or invoking the presence of one or more deities, especially with the goal of achieving kind of like divine perfection in oneself.
So we're getting deep into it then.
Yeah, this one's and they're all like this. So buckle in, strap yourselves in, folks. The second one is just occult. Not to be confused with occult.
Occult.
Yeah, which there are many. Occult is from the Latin word occultus, which just means clandestine, hidden, or secret. A lot of other people will say it's like paranormal or things like that.
Usually what it's associated.
It is
with.
now. Yeah, totally. But its initial thing just meant hidden from people or whatever. So lots of things are occult. You know what I mean? Knowledge can be occult. Rituals can be occult. Freaking, anything like that. Third one I got is esoteric. And that's intended for or likely to be understood by only a very small number of people, usually with specialized knowledge of interests. Knowledge belonging to a very select few, basically.
A coded message.
Yeah, for real. Another big one on the terms list is Gnosticism. I don't know if you guys ever heard of this particular...
With a G?
Yes, exactly. Yeah. After the Greek word for knowledge or insight, it is the name given to a loosely organized religious and philosophical movement that flourished in the 1st and 2nd centuries. And Gnosticism claimed to have secrets about God, humanity, and the rest of the universe, of which, the general population is basically unaware. And it became one of the 3 main belief systems within the 1st century Christianity, and was noted for its notable beliefs about God, the Bible, and other worldly religious groups. Gnosticism consists of many different belief systems, which combine elements taken from Asia, Babylon, Egypt, Greek, and Syrian pagan religions, also from astrology and from Judaism and Christianity and stuff. It's just basically like a worship of knowledge is basic as you can break it down.
So not necessarily like pagan or not necessarily monotheist?
Not at all. No, you're taking... Well, it's like you're trying to take everything, the best of everything. You're trying to be like, okay, a little bit of this, a little bit of that, sprinkle of salt, boil it for an hour. Sugar, water, purple. It's just like the worship of knowledge and information, rather than... your kind of typical Abrahamic religions where there's like a strict law that you have to follow, and it's like, dude, don't even learn about more stuff or whatever. So I can kind of see both sides in the sense of like, okay, it's good to have like a moral grounding and a moral rudder, as it were, you know what I mean? But at the same time, it's not exactly sinful to like ask questions and to,
challenge the status quo.
Absolutely. Right. Yeah, exactly, dude. And the last one I have is the profane, which is just the uninitiated or unenlightened.
Heathens?
Yes, exactly. The beastly, still locked into primitive ways people. Gotcha. All of us, basically, who aren't in or any way affiliated with any of these, societies.
People that aren't woke.
Yeah, exactly.
The unwoke.
So that's basically it. So a couple of terms or whatever. So if we ended up mentioning these in any of the research given up, that's how you'll know what we're talking about. And try to go into a bit of a brief... the beginnings of the secret society concept, basically. So I'm sure it existed a long ass time ago, especially with, as far as back as what I was looking, that's even on paper. And I'm sure it goes back even farther, but like Persian magi, the magic men of like India, Pakistan area and stuff, freaking, in the Middle East, Zoroastrianism and, rituals performed like in caves and stuff like that, but kind of more currently as far as how the secret societies have kind of taken shape in like a fraternal sense. is kind of outlined in this book by Albert Clark Stevens, which is like the Encyclopedia of Fraternities.
Okay.
It's from 1899.
Nice.
And basically it just kind of goes over how like all frats and sororities and stuff basically all have bits of like different secret society rituals, oaths, kind of sprinkled in or whatever, like the hazing of people
Right.
and stuff. That's a huge, like, that's all from all these like fraternity, like fraternal organizations, secret fraternal organizations and stuff. And in early America, and in 1693, there was the College of William and Mary, which is like the second oldest, next to, I think, like Harvard is like the oldest, I think.
That sounds about right.
This one's like the second oldest, basically. They basically started like the Phi Beta Kappa was like the first fraternity, which was weird because it was founded, I'm pretty sure, in 1776, and that date will be
magical year.
Yeah, exactly. Will become more important again later. And I don't think though like Greek frats kind of came into like real the way it is now as far as how we kind of see it until like the late 70s, basically.
Okay.
But its origins are like much older, and a lot of these secret societies or whatever are kind of based on like Plato's ancient mystery school. If you guys have ever heard of that, where he basically kind of teaches about like, well, just all the mysterious stuff that life has to offer and everything.
Okay. So before we begin, I just wanted to make a note of my personal first exposure to secret society. Well, as far as I can remember.
Right.
I used to read. I think I mentioned this before in another podcast, but I used to read this young adult series where it talked about a secret organization that had like coded messages, and they like had a secret meeting place, and they they had their own tunnel ways like through the city.
Oh, cool.
To get to places and whatnot.
Of course. Unseen.
So like I heard of like people, grown-ups at that time, as I would refer to them, as talking about like Illuminati and stuff. It's probably the first one I've ever heard of, or maybe the Freemasons. But that was the first one that kind of had like a tangible, oh, okay, this is what it's assumingly supposed to be like, or
right?
Whatever. And they had like their own slogans and things like that, and symbols everywhere. So,
totally. You're hearing grown-ups rather talk about like different like groups that are a group or whatever that have their own symbols and stuff. I'm confused what you were saying.
No, it was in a book.
It was a book. It's a Lemony Snicket.
Ah, of course.
Yeah.
Totally.
So.
Like a secret group or whatever that has their own like almost like language and symbolism and freaking all based on occult knowledge, I'm sure.
But I was wondering if maybe we should do a general your first exposure, or we could maybe go through each individual society that we talk about and break it down.
Gotcha. Word. So we'll begin the talk about the pretty much the oldest secret society that is at least on paper that we know for sure, and that is the Freemasons.
Oh yeah,
yeah. When was the first time any of you guys heard that name in pop culture or just in your lives in general?
Well, I did mention National Treasure earlier, and that was not a coincidence.
Yeah,
I was a youngin', and that's when I first heard about it. And then, like around that time, all the History Channel, National Geographic started, putting up all their little TV documentaries
because everybody was interested now. And
yeah, of course, the same thing happened around the Da Vinci Code.
Totally,
like we were just talking about. So
riding that secret society dollar.
Yeah, I mean, why not?
What about you, there, Andy?
I would say that I didn't know about the Freemasons until I was, probably an adult.
A man, word.
Yeah.
Well, I was actually going to mention the Simpsons.
Oh, you son of a bitch! Oh, actually, okay. So that one was one too, but mine was similar to that. It was a Simpsons episode, but it wasn't the Stonecutters episode.
Okay.
Do you know which episode I'm talking about?
I don't know which one.
Do you remember the episode where Mr. Burns makes a casino? And then gets all Howard Hughes crazy and like gets all, and then like he like looks at Mr. Burns
Freemasons
control the world. Right. Yeah, exactly. When he zooms in on his face and all the little things are talking, dude. And I was just like, what the fuck are Freemasons, dude? And I don't think I even looked it up. Me too. But like it just kind of stuck with me of like, who are they? Like that, because when we were kids, like especially in the older episodes of The Simpsons, like a lot of the jokes are way over your head because it's not pop culturally irrelevant because you're a child.
Yeah.
But I just kind of always stuck with me of like, that's just another thing that I didn't understand or whatever. But then when I heard it later, I'm just like, oh my God, the Simpsons were the ones that told me about that. Right. And then like you said, the Stonecutters episode is basically exactly like a fucking Mason Lodge. Yeah. You know what I mean? With all their like, Like, we shall tell you all about the secrets of life and the best way to live it. Now let's all get drunk and play ping pong.
And then a line in their song is, who keeps the Martians under wraps?
We do. Who held back the electric car?
That's
Who
right.
keeps Gene Gutenberg a star?
That's
We
right.
do. Awesome. Well,
Anything else to add, Andy? Sorry.
yeah,
I know
please
I-
jump
I know I
in.
cut you off.
Feel free to always jump in, dude, please.
When you mentioned The Simpsons, I just can recall all the times that I've seen those memes about how The Simpsons
Called
predicted
things.
the
Yes,
yeah,
totally.
like the Trump,
Uh-huh.
campaign and
9/11.
I don't know. I just are The Simpsons time travelers?
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
Someone had it was probably you, Marcus, that had a good theory about that. Is that I think we can all agree that Simpsons have basically done everything, right?
Yeah.
So if you've done everything, you're bound to
hit
something somewhere. A fucking broken
Yes.
clock is right twice a day. You know what I mean? So, it wouldn't. But then if they're releasing it on purpose or whatever, then you have to open up this whole can of worms. Okay, first of all, how do they know? And two, why are they releasing little tidbits here and there just to see if the people are woke? You know what I mean? Basically, I want to kind of when we go over all these different ones, I have a basic 5-part structure of kind of what is it, brief history of it, what they actually do, any rituals and symbols that they may participate in, and finally who are members, because obviously that's a juicy part of the whole schwingy.
Sometimes it's the whole reason you're interested in it.
Yeah, exactly. You're
Who's this
wait,
guy up to?"
who's a Mason?
Yeah.
Who's the fucking this guy? To begin, the Freemasons. They're the oldest and, possibly the most famous or infamous of all the fraternal organizations. The Freemasons trace their origins to a local frats of stonemasons, which from the end of the 14th century kind of regulated the qualifications of stonemasons and, also their interactions with clients. And nowadays, though, Freemasons are more known for their local philanthropy and civil service, despite their secrets and secrecy surrounding them. So the brief history of them, as I said, it's a little difficult, but kind of the earliest Masonic text containing the history of their organization, which kind of depicts the geometric and constructional secrets, is something called the Halliwell manuscript, or also is another name called the Regis poem, and this dates back to 1390s. So old.
Blow the dust off of that one.
Old, yeah.
So as I understand it, it's just to protect the kind of a trade secrets, I guess, for lack of a better term, of how best to be Masons, basically.
Yes, exactly. Not only do you want to keep your organization on the level, which is that's actually not a pun.
Get out.
That's because you want to keep everything, from falling apart, literally.
Right.
And these guys were conscripted to build some of the greatest structures at the time. You know what I mean? Conscripted by religious figures and kings and fucking whoever. And they wanted to obviously not only have quality control.
Yeah, high standards.
Exactly. And you can't do that if you're just kind of if you have no structure of keeping.
Don't give away the secret
Exactly, dude, for real. And frankly, why not? You know what I mean? It totally makes sense. You're why am I going to give this a-hole the freaking? He doesn't know anything about that. You know what I mean? Even some of the initiates, you kind of understandably be well, I'm not going to tell you that yet. You know what I mean? Not until you've reached the next level.
5.
Yeah, exactly. This manuscript basically traces its history to the biblical root. Followed by regulations of responsibility of the different grades of Freemasonry. So some believe that the Freemasons are the shattered remains of the Knights Templar,
Right.
who were basically disbanded by King Philip IV of France, and also Pope Clement, I believe, the Fifth, in 1307, for all kinds of stuff. Obviously, Satanism. Heathenism,
That old thing.
Doing homo stuff and worshiping idols and basically anything that the church was no, can't have that. A lot of people believe that they're related because the Freemasons' Grand Lodge, which we'll discuss what that is exactly later, are basically designed off of Solomon's Temple, which the Knights Templar apparently were there. And, the legend is that they found something underneath it. Perhaps the Ark of the Covenant or whatever. And, again, as Dan Brown or Nicolas Cage will have you believe.
Somewhere with a bunch of other artifacts.
Top men. Yeah, it's in there with, the Red Cross's 9/11 Relief Fund and, the cure for AIDS. All the things that should have been out and that didn't actually make it to the people who needed it. These temples were, Solomon Temple replicas, being Solomon's Temple originally was, the epicenter of worship. It was going to be like God's house. And so obviously, you want to build, King Solomon wanted to build it right. So they used stonemasons, to build this, opulent temple. They filled it with, sacred geometry and, designs, according to, things like the sacred golden ratio.
Right.
Things that you find the, divine geometry as they say.
Speaking of sacred geometry, that's something that's like prevalent throughout
the golden ratio.
Universe,
oh yeah, totally. That's why I think that they focus so heavily on it, is because it's literally in everything from leaves and freaking like everything like
fractals and all that.
Yes, dude, the Fibonacci sequence exactly.
I don't know if you guys have taken psychedelics.
I have.
It's
allegedly.
This is not the podcast.
Allegedly. But,
dude, just jump into a fucking JRE fucking. You know what you should do, bro? Is some fucking ayahuasca, dude. You need to do some DMT, bro.
Joe, have you ever tried DMT, Rogan?
Yeah, exactly, right?
No, but yeah, sacred geometry is a cool concept. Just
when you learn it kind of blows your mind. You're like, wait a minute. So, and to be honest, like, I'm not really like a super religious person, but when I see that, I'm just like, oh, that was an accident? I don't know. Like a mathematical accident that everything in the universe is based on this one ratio. Right. That to me seems like something went. You just get a mix of that, and bam!
Or even the shape of the parabola shows up in a lot of things too.
Oh yeah, totally. So, that's a fun word to say too.
Yes, it is.
Parabola.
Parabolic parabola. I feel like if I was like an opera singer or something that needed to talk a lot, I'd probably use that as my warm up.
Yeah. Motherfucker.
So as I said before, it's rumored that it's the resting place for the Ark of the Covenant, which contained the tablets that Moses planned to give to David, who was King Solomon's Faja. Presumably the lineage of these rituals and doctrine go back, obviously, to like Jerusalem, and then moved its way on to Egypt, and then finally into Europe, and specifically France and England, where they then took hold and then spread out across the globe, like to America and so on and so forth. So the first Grand Lodge, or the premier Grand Lodge of jolly old England, was in 1717 in London. And
where's that?
Across the pond.
It's in Europe somewhere.
Okay.
Yes. Someone from London called. And again, the design is based on the original Solomon's Temple. And so a lot of that symbolism kind of gets back to the back of a dollar bill. Have you guys ever you ever seen the back of a dollar bill? You ever seen the back of a dollar bill Jim. On weed? Well, there's if you look at the back of that bad boy, freaking obviously, besides on the right, you see the crest of the United States. But on the left, you see kind of a weird Egyptian symbol, which is weird because we're in the United States. So why is there an Egyptian symbol there with, of course, like a floating like triangle, separate capstone rather, with an all-seeing eye in the center of it, presumably the Eye of Horus, separated, levitated above the top of the pyramid, like if you took like a pyramid and cut the top off and then raised it up like an inch. And then underneath it, you have 13 levels. And in those like 13 levels, there are 33 steps. Well, bricks of the pyramid. And that is supposed to be basically like a tip of the hat to Freemasons, because as we're going to discuss here in a second, there is the Scottish Rite and the York Rite. One has 33 degrees, the other one has 13. So that makes up for the two representation of the numbers and the symbols there. So kind of like the third portion as far as like, what exactly do they do? The Freemasons. This is from the Freemasons like motto, or not motto really, but this is kind of like their, yeah, kind of basically. And that's, rules for the initiates.
Okay.
Quote, a candidate must be a man who comes of his own free will, by his own initiative, or by the initiative of jurisdiction. End quote. So basically the authority having jurisdiction. Where have we heard that before? And it's funny because I think they tacked on that last part because it says, a candidate must come, he must be a man that comes of his own free will, by his own initiative. And then they put, or, by invitation of like a guy who's high up or whatever. Like they were just like, well, we want to let Bill in. Come on. Like he doesn't want to ask. Just let him in. He's cool.
Hey man, I got this cousin,
Yeah, exactly. If you first were initiated, you would go into what's called the Blue Lodge. Okay. So you're gonna get hazed a bunch, you're gonna get paddled a bunch, I imagine. No, I don't know, but basically you're the bottom of the totem pole, dude. Sure. You just got in.
Lower class.
Exactly. Yep. And the next are like craft lodges, and obviously that's like the middle, and then finally going over to ancient craft lodges. Which are basically, a lot of them are just like temples, like full on, like Solomonic temples. And which is funny because some of the Blue Lodges are like very like modest, like literally they could be in like a room of like a YMCA or something. You know what I mean? Like a very like humble. Yeah, for real. Do you guys got enough lava? Okay, just want to thanks you for shopping at the airport Hilton. We're fine. Leave us alone. So this is these three lodges that I kind of just mentioned are also similar to the first 3 degrees of Masonry, which are basically accepted by both Scottish and York Rite. Everybody's got to go through the first 3, and then from there they kind of branch out to their own little shenanigans. And so again, like I said, the first degree is like the entered apprentice, followed by fellowcraft, and then finally master mason, which is kind of misleading because depending on which way you go, you still have either 10 or 23 or whatever. Math.
More stuff.
Yeah, you got way more to go. So it's funny. It's funny that they call themselves master masons and stuff. But does that to you guys sound like the trade that we are in specifically right now, or any trade craft? You have the apprentice, you got the journeyman, and then you got the master, right?
Yeah, sure. I mean, that's sort of any trade. Yeah, that's the word I was looking for.
Yeah, that's how they're all like structured, right?
Right.
Well, I think that this is literally where it comes from. This is where all of them come from. Sure. Like, this fraternal organization of like coveted knowledge and
I mean, back in like the medieval times, you had like blacksmiths and whatever.
Exactly the same way, dude. Absolutely.
Or
like a squire for like people that are knights and stuff. Same type of thing. I imagine like you start off in one thing and then you move to the next, and with every level up that you go, you get more and more knowledge, more and more information. This fraternal order is based, as I said, on kind of levels of hierarchy, mixed in with occult knowledge, traditions, ceremonial rituals, all that kind of thing, all centered around, as I said, sacred geometry, divine proportions, the golden ratio, with heavy Egyptian symbolism. As I said, there's 2 branches of Freemasonry, or what they call rites, and each have their own rituals and ceremonies and organizational hierarchy. As I said, for instance, the York Rite, they have 33 degrees, and that was basically started in the United States as an offshoot of people from the Scottish Rite.
It didn't start in York?
No, surprisingly. I know, right? Which I wonder if because, how New York... Yeah, exactly. So the English coming over here going like, oh, this is a good spot. Reminds me of home. Right. And it was brought over here in like the 1730s. And it was started by a small group of high-ranking Masons already who presumably weren't like at the top necessarily and kind of wanted their own, they couldn't wait, presumably, you know what I mean? These same original high-ranking members, after they started the York Rite, they also later formed something called the B'nai B'rith, which is kind of like after you've reached like past the 33rd degree, there's like 7 more degrees, but you have to be Jewish. It's like a very like, hey, sorry, go F yourself. Yeah, exactly. And the other rite is the Scottish Rite, and that's 13 degrees, as I said before. So it's a little shorter, if you're not in for the long haul. And that was basically started in France and then moved over to England. Obviously, all that came from like the Middle East and stuff, though. And this one was initially Christian only, and so it's weird that that was a thing because it presumably didn't last long, because if the guys who were in it initially ended up starting their own organization where they're like, well, fine, you can't be in here then. You know, you have to be part of our group then. How do you like that? So it's kind of weird. There's like, you know, there's a kind of a weirdness on both sides of going like, well, you have to be of certain ancestry or whatever, depending on, you know, if you want to join our group or not. So they're not very inclusive, both sides or whatever. And as I said earlier, you have to be, or as far as what I just read earlier, you have to be a man. It was men only.
Oh, yeah.
Although that's now changed.
Them was the days.
Yeah, exactly. Men run shit. So the fourth section that we're going to talk about with this can be rituals and symbols. And so, of course, the iconic square, compass, and capital G makes up the symbol of Freemasonry, obviously with the, what would you call it, like a construction square.
Yeah, not like an actual square.
Thank you, exactly. Like a 90-degree. There you go. Thank you. A 90-degree like ruler, right?
Yeah.
Like a ruler with a 90-degree angle on it,
basically.
Pointing down, capital G in the center, and then a compass.
What's the G stand for?
Basically, nobody really knows. But a lot of people think that's one. No, that's one. Yeah, exactly. Presumably, unless you're in the higher order. No one outside the order really presumably knows what the G is said for. But as you just said earlier, Freak, a lot of people think it stands for God because obviously God holds dominion over all things. Sure. And with the whole golden ratio aspect and everything, and the presumably like
divine creation.
Thank you. That was exactly what I was trying to say. But others believe that it just simply stands for geometry because they're so, you know, they're so centered around that. Yeah. And hypothetically, it would be to remind Masons that that geometry and Freemasonry are synonymous terms described as being, the noblest of sciences and the basis upon which the superstructure of the Freemasons and frankly everything in existence in the entire universe is erected.
And we should say, just for posterity, that when we're talking about the compass too, it's like a drawing compass.
Yeah, I accidentally. Yeah, not a compass like you find your way like when you're lost, but a compass which people use for navigation.
It could be used for anything. Like you could use it to like
so it's
scale
measurements also too. Okay,
or even to use it. You can use it as a drawing tool, for example.
To make a circle or whatever. Yeah, totally. Actually, I'm just realizing this now that that's pretty cool. That those
or
are
just
two.
to pick up some M&Ms or something.
Yeah, something like really tiny where you can't quite grab, or maybe you don't want to touch it because it's gross and you just need to move it out of the way of your. Yeah, I think the symbolism is kind of cool because it's like showing you that like measurement in life and quantification is like important. Yeah. Like, to find your place, you need to be able to measure things in order to find your place in life. Find where you are. Yeah, totally. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like what is time, but the measurement of like moving of like elements and planets expanding and stuff like that. You know what I mean? So it's all, Also, the G might also just stand for Gnosticism because the Freemasons are obviously very much into knowledge, and you don't necessarily have to believe in a specific deity anymore to join, but you do have to believe in something, I guess. Right. That's kind of a supreme being, totally. There was a group that I was in.
Lovecraftian?
Yeah. So some additional symbolism just to kind of jot down for people to kind of keep an eye out for when they're watching, let's say the Super Bowl halftime show.
Oh, here we go.
Chock full of esoteric symbolism. Black and white tile are we'll get there, bro. You just fucking settle down, dude. Okay? Yeah. Black and white tile is like pretty much the most well known symbol next to the compass, G, and square. Black and white tiles to represent the duality in life, light and dark, good and evil, and energy and fucking matter, time and space, balance. That kind of thing. Yes, indeed. Well, that's kind of a partial side note of Gnosticism is that like, you can't, if things are kind of unbalanced, then obviously you're going to have chaos. Pillars are a big one, especially two obelisks, like the Egyptian representation of Osiris's wiener. Right. I'm pretty sure, if I'm not mistaken, which I totally could be. Also,
Washington Monument.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, for real. Little looks like a giant wiener. Quick little random note about that, Tully, and we can cut this out if you want. But guess how tall the Washington Monument is? 555 feet. Why does that matter? Guess how long the base is that's buried into the ground. Take a wild guess.
55 feet.
111. for a grand total of 666. Might just be a coincidence, though. So another another additional symbolism that is in here is a noose around the neck. Not to be confused with a certain gentleman in Chicago that posed a certain thing that happened. We're not going to talk about that. Another another thing of symbolism is a one shoe on the foot, and also one pant leg rolled up to show allegiance, or even possibly to send a message to other Masons.
Right, like the handkerchief in the left back pocket.
Yes, totally. Or like the weird, yeah, exactly, with whatever color and everything, and or even like the hidden hand thing that Napoleon likes to do.
Oh yeah,
kind of tuck a hand into the shirt pocket there, and of course, the secret handshake. Which, if you go on like online, there's all kinds of like, check it out, they do this and they do that, and then they tickle, yeah, exactly, and then they wiggle the knuckle, and then they do the fucking Hey Arnold, wee fucking thing. So some of the rituals that are involved in this is during initiation, the Hiram Abiff allegory story is told. Now, Hiram Abiff was basically just, well, he wasn't just a guy. He was the head designer of Solomon's Temple. He's like the
project manager.
Yes. He was the boss, and God, was he a slave driving asshole. He would just freaking like, yeah, 2 minutes after coffee break's over, get back to work. He's like the rock star. He's like the Jesus of the of the Jesus of Freemasonry. He's like their head cheerleader guy.
He's the L. Ron Hubbard of the Freemasons.
There you go. Yeah, absolutely. Perfect. So basically during this allegorical story, point is to kind of highlight the importance of loyalty and secrecy, as well as legacy, because you want to show you that there are some things that are more valuable than your own life. People wanted knowledge that worked with him, be lower on the totem pole Masons. We want to skip ahead, basically, or whatever. Tell us the thing. And he's like, no. And I killed him, basically. That's it as far as the rituals and symbols. But we're going to move on to the final phase of this one, and that's the members. This one was important and interesting because a grand total of 14 U.S. presidents.
A gangle.
Shaq was a Freemason.
Yes, sir, he is.
Shaq?
Mm-hmm. Yep. And his ring, I bet, is fucking huge. That dude has some large extremities.
They had to go to Nidavellir.
And the handshake or whatever was like super hard because his hand is so goddamn big that you had to like reach around with your whole hand just to get the back knuckle kind of a thing going on. Damn it, Shaq! All right, he's fine. He's good. He's in. So a grand total of 14 U.S. presidents were Freemasons, including Washington, and as well as some others like James Monroe, Andrew Jackson, James Polk, James Buchanan, Andrew Johnson, James Garfield, William McKinley, Theodore Roosevelt, William Howard Taft, Warren G. Harding, Franklin D. Roosevelt, Harry S. Truman, and Gerald Ford. So a bunch of people. Other people that were important that were Freemasons were some explorers and adventurers, including Davy Crockett, Jim Bowie, Sam Houston, Lewis and Clark both, Charles Lindbergh, and Kit Carson. And also, finally, as far as the explorers and adventurers, a gentleman named Buzz Aldrin, which was interesting because obviously he was the pilot on the Apollo 11 mission. And when they were taking pictures,
with Woody?
He did. He helped basically defend the Galactic Alliance against Zurg, right. Who was an evil emperor and sworn enemy of the Galactic Alliance. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, he buddied up with Woody, and then
he was in the Gamma Quadrant on Sector 4.
Exactly.
Yeah. Sorry.
Well done. Which was also interesting because, and I don't know if you guys have ever seen any of these pictures, but there is a picture of Buzz Aldrin on the moon with a flag of the with a Freemason flag. Yeah, his local.
I've never heard.
His local Texas. I'll show. Well, I'll put in the description. I'll put besides a bunch of videos and stuff like that. I'm gonna put links to pictures and stuff like that or whatever. And he put his local Texas like lodge flag up there. Hell yeah, bro! You're going to the fucking moon, presumably. Like,
yeah, I mean,
you gotta. I claim this land for Spain. Oh. So just kind of finishing up here because this, like I said, this is a very large organization, and there's a lot of people in here and stuff. So some of the businessmen that are of note are Henry Ford, which is obviously the titan of American industry, as well as Walter P. Chrysler.
Chrysler Corporation.
Yes, exactly. Nathan Meyer Rothschild, another big name. John Jacob Astor, another gigantic name. Charles Hilton. Colonel Hardland Sanders, which I don't know if that's like the Colonel Sanders. You know, they wanted him into the organization because he had delicious chicken, and he wasn't gonna. He wasn't gonna give up the recipe.
That's right.
So you see, so I think that they were like, you know, hey,
I respect that.
Get this motherfucker in here and like tell him to give it up, dude. And now he's like doing striptease commercials for some reason. Tell me if you guys have seen that commercial. It's fucked up. And also, finally, Steve Wozniak, the co-founder of Apple Computers.
The guy that took the bite out of the apple.
Exactly. Yeah. And then the snake talked to him, and no, it's different.
Different apple.
Oh,
Yeah,
sorry.
no, that's Eve, not Adam and Steve.
Oh shit! Damn it! Sorry. Thank you. You got to keep me on fucking point, dude. And so the final two guys I'm going to mention they're not really famous. They are in the like occult conspiratorial realm or whatever. But both of these guys were master masons, 33-degree masons, and also kind of behind the scenes influential members or whatever. And one of them was a gentleman named Albert Pike, who wrote a book called Morals and Dogma, which just kind of goes over all the the dogma of Freemasonry and kind of the rules and like why you do this and this and that. He also wrote a contentious paper, essay, if you will, outlining all three world wars.
All three?
Yes. Well, all things come in three, Marcus. Come on, you know that. I mean, all good things come in three. It's debated whether or not this paper whether or not Albert Pike actually wrote this paper or whatever, because a lot of the things that he said in it are like insanely like
prophetic.
Yes, big time. And so that kind of leads some people to be like, well, that's kind of convenient, like that, you know, these things are like almost perfectly, you know, being represented by the things he wrote like 100 years ago. Mm-hmm. Another gentleman is named Manly P. Hall, and he wrote a book called The Secret Teachings of All Ages. And I highly recommend if you guys are into Freemasonry or into like learning about them, just look up those guys and just go nuts on the rabbit hole that is weird, crazy information. It's definitely interesting. So, all right, Marcus, take it away.
Well, I hate to have to follow that up. Thanks, Drew.
Well, that was a lot. I apologize. There's a lot to go over for Freemasons. I almost called them assholes. These guys have been around for a long time. I use that word very loosely. Don't take it so personally, any Freemasons that are listening.
I have one, and it is the Bilderberg Group.
Ooh.
Bilderberg meetings, officially.
Yeah, totally.
They're called. It has many names.
Where was the first time you heard about any of this stuff?
Well, the thing is, it's one of those things, sort of like MK Ultra, where it gets sort of repackaged in pop culture.
There's another group that we're going to be talking about where that is a major freaking part.
Oh, sure, I'm sure. So I never heard of the official name of this sort of thing until I really looked into it. Mm-hmm. But
what about you? Have you ever heard of the Bilderberg Group? Or
Bilderberg? No.
Build-A-Bear?
Yeah, right, totally.
It's that place in the mall.
Oh,
right?
they're so cuddly and cute and just... I don't really understand why people have such a problem with them.
Yeah.
No, this is the first time I've ever heard of
That's
Bilderberg.
That's awesome.
Okay, so again, we're going to follow...
virgin.
Ooh, break him in. Be gentle.
We're going to follow Drew's...
monologue.
Going to follow Drew's pattern here. So starting with the purpose. The purpose of the organization at its founding was to promote Atlanticism, which is sometimes called transatlanticism.
Word.
Which is basically pro-North America and European ideals. Things
over other nations, presumably.
Right, yeah. And born out of this same sort of way of thinking, things like NATO.
Conglomerates and groups working together for a single
just for the prosperity of, capitalism, basically, and Western ideals and
big industry and
all that stuff. And I say that because now basically it's more or less a giant capitalism tank.
Just a bunch of ultra capitalists sitting around jerking each other off.
Right. So their activity, public and or private, basically it's just, like I said, Bilderberg meetings is the official name. They're meetings of politicians, corporations, media people, personnel. Mm-hmm. Basically those three things, but
pretty much anybody who you would want on your team to get something done in the public sphere, right?
And that's interesting because politicians, corporations, and media are three different things that should be completely separated. And anytime they get together, especially if you put them behind closed doors, could mean lots of terrible things are going to happen.
Yeah, totally. Because if you don't... So, Marcus, you're saying that a lot of media people come to this, right? But that's weird because if the media was there, we would have heard of this, right?
Well...
Like, mean, Andy, you seem like a pretty knowledgeably savvy guy. You got your finger relatively on the pulse of society, it seems. And yet you've never heard of this organization as big as it is, yeah?
It's pretty large. We'll get into that.
Sir.
Yeah, but anytime those three things overlap, even just between one and two of them, like I said, especially behind closed doors, conspiracy theories are generally going to have to build.
Oh, of course, dude.
Anytime
Because they're like,
closed
hey,
doors in
what are
general,
they doing in there?
but-
I bet you it's bad.
Right. The reason this kind of gets into the conspiracy, it's allegedly the meeting places of people trying to create a one world government. Because these are power players, right?
Exactly. They're consolidating their power of how to keep it and how to get more of it, yeah?
Right. So this was established back in 1954 after World War One, right? It started with 11 countries. It's since grown to about 18.
So it still seems pretty, exclusive. In the last,
right.
100, well, not that long, but, 70-something years, 60-something
Considering all the
years.
countries in Europe.
Yeah, for real. You're like, well, we'll let in a couple more. It's called the No Germanese Club. We're allowed to have one.
Right. These meetings are meetings in which no speech is attributed. So, they talk freely amongst each other, but nobody can say... They can take the information that they gained or whatever, and they can talk about it, but they can't say, oh, so-and-so said this and this and this.
Ah, no name dropping.
Right, exactly.
That makes sense.
And so that's what kind of leads people to be like...
A gentleman's
we
agreement.
need more transparency, this sort of thing, especially because of the kind of people who are involved. For example, the people who have headed it have been, at one time, the UK Prime Minister, President of Germany, the Secretary General of NATO, and I'm just going to list off a...
Please do.
a list
Who's who
attendees.
of...
Jeff Bezos of Amazon.
Nice.
Bill Gates of Microsoft. Chris Hughes was the co-founder of Facebook. Various NATO leaders, as you might imagine. David Rockefeller, grandson of John
Scumbag Supreme.
Henry Kissinger, Hillary Clinton, Margaret Thatcher. People from the Federal Reserve, such as Ben Bernanke and Paul Volcker. Charlie Rose. All these people who are, like I said, power players.
Took the words right out of my mouth. Big time power players.
And so...
Like when you think of quote unquote the 1%, or the richest of the rich of the rich,
right?
These guys.
Right. And so you have all these people meeting behind closed doors. What the hell are they talking about? Because not a lot of information really gets out about what happens in these meetings. Because they've been happening for 50 plus years.
For a while,
Sorry,
yeah.
Did you kind of already go over why that is?
Why that they don't...
Why the secrecy?
Like you said, a lot of stuff that goes on behind closed doors doesn't get released to the
public,
general public. Sure. Did you talk? Talk about
they're
it?
not it's not. They can't have, for example, reporters or something like that.
Right.
It's supposed to.
They set up a perimeter around wherever they're meeting.
Yeah,
and there's a complete media blackout, dude. Lockdown. And they hire private security, and
that's kind of what. It's tricky because of its secrecy is sort of what draws these people. Is like, okay, now I can talk about these things and
freely.
It's not going to come back to me and bite me in the ass.
Right.
Shareholders are going to be like, what's going on?
Totally.
Or the electorate isn't going to be like, oh, you said this.
Discretion is super important when you're trying to do big things.
So,
no spoilers.
Exactly.
Does that sort of answer your question?
Yeah, no, that does.
Yeah, so also a couple of times it's might have sprinkled in and out of the zeitgeist. In 1996, there's been numerous books about this organization.
Totally.
If you can call it
documentaries and stuff, too.
In 1996, there was a paper written by Mike Peters on the group that was pretty popular. There was even a episode of Jesse Ventura's Conspiracy.
Jesse Ventura here.
About
the Illuminati's coming to get you.
Fidel Castro's talked about it. There was a John Ronson documentary.
Yes. We're going to talk about him again later.
Oh, great. So...
Have you heard any of the rumors around there as far as
Well, that's actually what I was going to get into is because, like I said, conspiracies can run wild.
Of course.
So...
As they do.
It's generally people talk about it as like a new world order or a secret shadow government sort of
controlling things, and therefore and all our like elections and
or
stuff
even
are just a show.
Planned economy sort of thing. They're
yes.
like, okay, we're going to do this, and this to have this and this effect on the economy.
Totally.
Or even the outcome of elections,
Yep.
Because politicians get involved.
That's what I was getting at, is because, like you said, politicians get involved, and a lot of these people that end up going to these meetings, some of them either become or just run for like very high heads of office.
Yeah, and
like
for a while they weren't even supposed to be. They were supposed to be very bipartisan, I guess you could say. Even though it's obviously not. Just,
obviously not at all.
Not
yeah, hyper capitalist. Yeah, exactly.
But supposed to be very diverse politically, and they're not supposed to like endorse any sort of candidates or something. But recently,
well, but why would they? Because of course they're trying to grab from all areas or whatever, right? Why would you be selective of only getting the things that are aligned with your like?
And my personal belief is that they started off with good intentions, and eventually they kind of realized, hey, we have this black box.
Totally. This power. Absolute power corrupts absolutely. That's kind of how a lot of these organizations, in my opinion, kind of follow. It starts off good, just a fraternity, just a bunch of dudes getting together, having a beer, just wanting to like share the knowledge.
Just want to make a nitty club, bro.
You know what I mean? Just leave me alone. Like fucking Hitler. All I want to do is do watercolors, but they want me to be this fucking leader, and I just don't want to do it. But yeah, I think a lot of these organizations kind of start off like that, where it starts off good intentions. You're just trying to like enlighten people, or maybe just kind of bring a new idea in and stuff, and just kind of as things grow with any organization, things get kind of shitty. I remember, I think I've talked to you about
even
like
religions too.
Oh fuck, yeah, especially religions.
Yeah.
I think I've talked to you about this, when I had like the hypothesis of saying like, I bet you there's a quantifiable formula for determining when the group will go bad, dude, based on time and admittance of members. The more time that goes by and the more admittance of members or whatever, the more likely you are that your group is going to spiral out into the shit that is not what you started it to be or whatever. Compromises start getting made, and then before you know it, you guys aren't even close to what you used to be before.
Which is what amazes me about Burning Man. That has not devolved into complete chaos. But
you ever been to Burning Man?
as far as how bad it could go.
Yeah, anyway. True. Well, I mean, that kind of brings up like a kind of a side note of like, if human beings, if they have enough things in common that they're working for, things will only get so bad, in my opinion. But as soon as there's like a rift between them, you can be like, oh, those people are different, or they don't think like us or whatever. Suddenly that connection is shattered, and now things can devolve into like an animalistic, chaotic fucking, fuck that guy, fuck this guy,
So that's pretty much all I have on that.
So where do they usually, because a lot of these people, or presumably all these people are very, anytime somebody of big, religious, business, TV, whatever importance goes out, they're always followed by the media, right? So this immense gathering of A-listy people.
And I should mention real quick that there's plenty of people from other countries. These are just people that are American.
Yeah, it's related to us, of course, or in relation to what we could understand. But my point is all these big, heavy-hitting power players meeting together in one place. You'd presume that you would need, you can't just meet at some dude's house, right? You know what I mean? So
or the back of a Holiday Inn.
Yeah, kind of lava. Yeah.
Oh, and I should also mention what's interesting. I found that it's at least started as this transatlantic capitalist sort of thing. There's been people who've been there, notable members from like Russia and China, which is kind of strange.
But only recently, right?
Yes, only recently. So
branching out.
That again feeds into the one world government sort of theory. So
you got to bring in certain people who are going to help you, achieve your goals. I was just going to say, do they always meet in the same place?
No, it spreads around different countries pretty much every time.
Yeah, it's on like a weird like rotating.
And it's sort of like the Olympics where they gotta pay for it. And they gotta raise money for people.
Security and all that stuff. Yeah, the locals run security, and there's a total media blackout and a perimeter and a bunch of like, freaking people posting up with signs and stuff saying, you're turning the frogs gay and fucking, whatever people are upset about.
And it's crazy that in this day and age that the shit doesn't leak out somehow.
Yeah, well, I mean, it is now finally, but I feel like with most things, most people won't pay attention. It's already out there. But you have to actually go looking for it.
Right.
If you're not going to go looking for it, you're not going to find it. Dude, we're so inundated with so much fucking data and knowledge and, just distractions and stuff like that, that it's totally understandable. That's an event this massive happening every year in like, late June or July or late August or whatever. I think it's after the Grove meetings, so I'm not sure exactly. But yeah, you think this will draw a ton of freaking attention and that people would freaking find out about it. And again, they kind of are, but, you know. The last thing I was going to ask you about, Marcus, on this particular subject.
One of those things you could just spend hours on going down a YouTube hole.
Oh, my God. Yeah, dude, for real, dude. Like, your eyes all freaking size of coconuts. It's like 3 o'clock in the morning. Hold on, just one more video. So the reason why that, I think, is important, though, too, Marcus, is have you ever heard of something called the Logan Act?
The Logan Act.
The Logan Act.
No. Does that have to do with Wolverine?
Yes. See, basically...
Is that like the Weapon X program?
Exactly,
okay,
yes.
gotcha.
Where you can only allowed to build so many Weapon X's in a year based on... Yeah. The Logan Act is actually United States federal law that criminalizes the negotiations by unauthorized persons within foreign governments having to, like presumably having like a dispute with the United States. It's intended to... behind the act is to prevent unauthorized negotiations, undermining government programs and stuff like that, you know what I mean? Or agendas, rather. Okay. So, for instance, if you have like Theresa May or Tony Blair or fucking, exactly, acting chiefs of staffs or, anybody who technically has a government role right now, they're not allowed to go and talk to another head of state or another whatever. It's highly illegal. You're not allowed to do that because...
What do you mean, like in general or like...
No, I mean, you could probably like Facebook message them and be like, what's up, bro? Did you see the last episode of fucking Game of Thrones? That was pretty sweet. Like, fucking Winter Walkers and stuff. And the act was passed by following George Logan's unauthorized negotiations with France in the 1790s, 1798, I think specifically. And it was signed into law by President John Adams in 1799.
If I may.
Please. Of course, dude.
Is the
Marcus,
Logan Act
you're the co-host, you asshole. You can do whatever you want.
Is the Logan Act still in effect, or did they...
It is, but ask me if it's followed. Right, yeah, exactly. I don't think it's been like over, like, as far as like the Logan Act, it definitely hasn't been like over, like turned or whatever. It hasn't been used since like 1800s, probably.
It's like any law, like, it's only as powerful as the
enforcement of it.
Exactly.
Yeah, totally.
So.
Like ducks wearing long pants.
Right.
So you just let ducks get away with every kind of fashion fucking faux pas ever, dude. It's atrocity. What? I love old laws. They're hilarious. No horses walking across the street on Thursdays of the first of the month.
What was the process back then? People
who the fuck knows? Just write it in and be like, yeah, sure, that sounds good. Okay, lunch, everybody?
There was like 2 people in the city council.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, totally. Come on, let's get this over with. Hurry up.
Down the street, I'd want him to stop.
That guy's an asshole, right? Totally. He keeps walking his goddamn... Getting all over the place, pooping all over the street. Something's got to be done about this, Mayor. Quad, who knew that being a figurehead would mean I would have to make decisions?
I was elected to lead, not to read.
Yeah, right. So the next group that we're going to be talking about is probably one that is the most well-known next to the Freemasons, I would say, almost even more so. And that is, any guesses?
The Eye?
Yes, indeed. The all-seeing eye, the Illuminati. The plural of Latin illuminatus, which just means enlightened, is a name given to several groups, both real and fictitious. Historically, the name actually, though, usually refers to the Bavarian Illuminati.
Yeah, you got to be careful about how you trod this one.
Yeah, absolutely. Educate yourself.
So, do we want to talk about first exposure and that sort of thing?
As soon as I'm done with the description here.
Sorry. Don't mean to step on your toes.
Sorry, no, it's all good. Which is the Bavarian Illuminati were an Enlightenment era secret society founded on the 1st of May of 1776. There's that number again. Oh. The society's goals were apparently to oppose superstition, religious influence over public life, and abuses of state power.
Again, sounds good.
Yeah, exactly, dude. All good shit. They wrote in their general statutes, quote, "The order of the day is the soup of the day, which is the soup du jour."
Tomato base.
And it's, yeah, exactly. Sorry. Quote, "The order of the day is put an end to the machinations of the purveyors of injustice to control them without dominating them." So really, it sounds like they're trying to take society and kind of nudge it, like Cass Sunstein's
nudge.
Not
to be totalitarian.
Yeah, don't be a complete prick, but kind of let everybody know, hey, you guys are acting like fucking idiots. Like, knock it off. Like, So what's the first time that any of you guys ever heard of the evil eye?
Oh God! Again, this is one of those things that
you almost can't put your finger on, huh?
Yeah,
because
there's different
because it's so prevalent in pop culture that you're like, fuck, where did I hear about that?
People say so many different things about it, and you're just like,
it's basically an umbrella term now.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. I'm trying to think of the first time I might have heard of something like that.
Was it Jay-Z? It was Jay-Z, wasn't it?
No, that would have been recently.
You're gonna use this like secret society organization, like this like shadowy like thing to like sell T-shirts. No, I know exactly. It's like whatever works, I guess, and stuff. And what's funny is that like celebrities nowadays, that's like a huge thing. Like, ooh, Justin Bieber, are you in the Illuminati? Which is hilarious. Like, like they have these people in there.
Should I talk about what people say?
Please do. And if we don't like it, we can.
Okay.
Axe that
so
shit.
yeah, I mean, you hear things like they're behind the entertainment industry and they're doing like subliminal messaging, or you hear things like devil worshipping,
totally,
or you hear things like
it's synonymous with
deep state
ton
type
of shit.
Stuff.
Yes.
So. Or it's all of the above, you know, all at once.
Which is not to say that type of fuckery isn't going on, but to attribute it all to like one overarching, all collective cabal of evil world-shaping people.
There's a point that I wanted to make, and I wasn't sure when to put this in. But if there's such a secret, puppet master pulling the strings, and it has such unimaginable absolute power, would we really know about it if they were that powerful?
If they were like smart, well, I don't know. I guess you'd have to understand of like a strategy form of like, should you let it out and that way and just ridicule it? You know what I mean? Like how they do with like other conspiracies of like, you believe in
this is and make
exactly. You believe that fucking 9/11 is an inside job. Oh, so I guess Sasquatch was flying the planes into the tower, and then then Nessie came out and fucking you know what I mean? Like completely making it just hilarious and stupid and silly. And
that's one of the quote like conspiracy theories is like that term was coined to make the real conspiracy theories.
It was actually by the CIA actually in the early to mid 60s after the Kennedy assassination, and everybody and everybody because especially back then you wanted to get the information and the news from your trusted sources of government, because why would they lie to you? They're our government. They're Americans too. You know what I mean? You got to fight these Ruskies. And so of course when you release some stuff like that, especially when people are asking a lot of things about like the Warren Commission and stuff like that, and like, really, the magic bullet? That sounds like horse shit. And they're like, shut up, you conspiracy theorist, anti-fucking America. Yeah, exactly, dude. So, that's definitely a huge part of it for sure. And frankly, I feel like they would want to release it because A, you can capitalize on it. B, you can make people come into your group. You can scare people because you're this like overarching, super secret, shadowy. Nobody knows where it is or how powerful it is and stuff. There's power in mystery.
Sure.
You know what I mean?
Right.
And also, would it be really worth, especially this day and age of the internet and instant communication and stuff, is it even possible to keep a lid on whatever piece of information you want to keep quiet? I'd say it's really fucking hard. You know what I mean? Obviously, we don't know exactly what's going on. For instance, like what we were just talking about with the Bilderbergs.
Right.
We don't really know exactly what's going on in there. Now, they've been leaked like agenda sheets and stuff like that or whatever, but basically that's it. We have no fucking idea what is going on in there, dude. And it's, 2019, dude.
I mean,
like,
how small can you put a fucking tiny recorder?
That's what I'm saying. Like, really? Nobody? Well, presumably they have, like, shit where you walk in, it's like, oh, you have an electronic device on you? Get out. Yeah, exactly, dude. Like, who knows what kind of shit that they have? Because people, this is something that I firmly believe is that we, as, like, the average people in society, the uninitiated, the profane,
the unwoke.
Yes. Word. Well done. We're easily, and I'm being really giving here, we're easily like a decade behind the current technology. That's fucking a proven fact, dude. The F-117 stealth fighter aircraft was around in the late 50s. And we didn't get released till like the 80s, I think. Basically, or maybe the 70s or whatever.
Classified one.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like, it would be, in my opinion, foolish to think that there aren't certain companies that are creating...
Especially if they're working for the government.
Fuck yeah, dude, with these lucrative business deals and stuff like that, dude. Endless amounts of money that you can just throw at this problem.
Contracts.
Fuck yeah, dude. And so, I just think it would be naive to think that, like, we're at the cutting edge. We, as the people at the bottom, are at the cutting edge. We have access to the cutting edge technology or whatever. I feel like the shit that we get is literally like the cutting room floor of like the technological creation of stuff.
It's gone through several human trials. We've killed several people.
Basically, dude. Like, now obviously, I've heard some people say that there's possibly that we're like 50 or even 100 years behind certain aspects of technology that certain countries and certain people have because they wouldn't want to release it because it changes the game.
Right.
Think about the first person who had a gun. Think about that. That fucking changed everything, dude. And it's the same thing with like AI. And with Putin always talking about like, no, there's a race going on right now for fucking everybody to develop AI. I think that they've already fucking created it. Not necessarily Russia, but just the world in general. Because it's such a game changer, dude.
Right.
And if you were to release that before, you get to do whatever with it or whatever, you've lost your advantage.
Right. Just 2 points I wanted to make is just like DARPA on the internet, right?
Oh, those great guys.
So
DARPA.
If you
such a
that
wonderful
leads into my second point is, especially if you think about it from a military
What is
perspective.
DARPA? Just so for the people that don't know. Defense Advanced Research Association or something.
Projects.
They build weapons.
Yeah, because I don't know off the top of my head. So
they build robots. They're basically going to be the guys who are responsible for the extinction of the human race.
Are they like Halliburton?
Of like they're the Halliburton of the technology industry. Halliburton's like the chemical and. Well, I mean, I guess they're in like
they do
industry
like military
too.
applications.
They do. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, totally.
Okay,
yeah, they are. Yeah, but they're like the cutting edge. That's where all the research money goes into is DARPA. Sorry.
So
you said
if you think about it from a military perspective, you would want to maybe keep that sort of thing secret if you had, some crazy advanced technology that you don't want the public to know because then your enemies know about it.
Exactly.
Like if you had a super awesome drone that could, fucking snipe somebody from another continent.
Obviously, you wouldn't want that to get out because you could do it.
Right.
You could use it in all kinds of useful ways.
Yeah.
Useful, deadly, effed up ways.
Anyways, I feel like we're going off on a big tangent.
Yeah, but it's important to understand that like there's a reason why secrecy is so important. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? It's if you want something done, you can't let the whole friggin' world know about it. And that is the kind of the essence of secret societies. That is the essence of why people distrust them and why the Bilderberg Group specifically, among all the other ones, are so shadowy and lame and like I'm fishing for straws for adjectives here right now, but like
borrow my thesaurus.
Right, thank you, sir. But yeah, because it has such an effect on society in general, and we're left in the dark to basically hope that our leaders are actually have our best interests in mind and not their own, and not wanting to just consolidate power.
I mean, I hate to equate, just one more point, I hate to equate sci-fi with reality, but I mean, how many sci-fi stories have you heard of like some crazy, super smart scientist, gets either abducted or is, goes missing or starts working for the government and whatever, like
killed by Libyans.
Research. Yeah, well.
Marty!
So, yeah, exactly. It is a perfect example. Continue on with the Illuminati.
Oh, yeah.
That thing that we were supposed to be talking about.
What were we talking about again? I kind of, sorry, I just kind of trailed off there.
I totally cut you out of the picture. Did you want to?
Yeah, what was your first like exposure to the Illuminati in general, or that name or that word? Can you even remember? Like,
no, like you guys, it's just been kind of so.
It's like always been there. Like,
yeah, inundated with these kinds of.
It's like asking somebody, "When's the first time you experienced rain?"
Word. Yeah. Word. Good call. You're just like, I don't fucking have any idea.
3.
Yeah, right?
Yeah, I just, it's just kind of, it's always been a part of my life, I guess. The Illuminati.
Who knew?
Always there
He's always there, The warm
can always
blanket.
count on him.
Right?
That Illuminati guy.
Good people, that guy. So, a brief history of the Illuminati, and basically, I kind of only have historical, most of my research kind of focused on the history because, as I'm going to talk about in a little bit, they are no longer around.
Goes underground.
Yeah. And, so we're going to kind of focus just on the history aspects or whatever because it's kind of permanent. So, the Age of Enlightenment began, with a new era of, thought and behavior, contrast to the dominant ways of the church at the time. And, France was basically the epicenter of this, like, Enlightenment period and, liberty and free thinking and all that. That's why Jefferson was always doing his little Euro trips out to France or whatever because he liked the ideas there so much and actually helped bring a lot of that back over here when he wrote the Bill of Rights and all that stuff with his buddy there. So this Enlightenment period was filled with some names that you guys might remember or whatever, which is like Ben Franklin, John Locke, Voltaire.
Yep.
Pretty sure like John Dee and Sir Francis Bacon and all those guys. I might have the dates on that just a hair wrong, but
you could equate that,
right? All these like super popular and influential figures, which specifically later on, because you know how we were talking about maybe doing like a bio episode on like really important people. Voltaire, Sir Francis Bacon, John Locke, and John Dee are all in that list, along with like, you know, a gag of others that I wanted to do because those guys are all super interesting. And these were basically men whose studies were based in reason and science rather than like clergy and faith and that kind of stuff. So in steps a gentleman named Adam Weishaupt.
God bless those men.
Yeah. Yeah, right. He was a descendant of Jewish converts to Christianity, and he was orphaned at a young age, and his scholarly uncle took care of him and his education. And enrolled him in a Jesuit school. We're not actually going to talk about them on this episode, but the Rosicrucians and as well as the Jesuits, we're going to do a quick little thing on them maybe in another episode because they're a very prevalent secret society group or whatever. That's like an offshoot of Catholicism. And so he was studying at the school, which is the University of Ingolstadt, which is in Bavaria, or today Germany. In 1773, Weishaupt became professor of canon law and practical philosophy. Good things to know. And he was basically the only non-clerical professor at professional professor.
Sure,
I just kind of jammed those words together. He was the only non-clerical professor at this institution that was run by these Jesuits. And which has got to be kind of weird. You're like the only non-religious dude there, and everyone's kind of looking at you like, how come Atom's not going to mass? It's just sitting in his classroom all day, going over books and stupid stuff like that, and resolving to.
The Asians do.
Yeah, that'll have to do. Lay off the Asians, Luke. During this time, Weishaupt became deeply anti-clerical, resolving to spread the ideals of the Enlightenment through some sort of secret society of like-minded individuals. And
so, sorry if I may.
Yeah, please.
Is that kind of because just the power of the church, basically? Like,
presumably,
to be kept underground.
Yeah, if you're in any situation where, if you're ever in a situation where you're kind of like surrounded by people who don't agree with you, it kind of provides a chilling effect. You don't really want to talk about certain things. Maybe you don't want to bring up certain things. You don't want these snowflakes to get all upset, and be triggered. So yeah, obviously it would make sense to kind of
keep it on the DL.
Yeah, exactly, dude. Yeah. You don't want to get burned at the fucking stake, dude. And I mean, this wasn't that long after that type of shit was happening. Right. You know what I mean? So yeah, for real, dude. I don't know what they did in Bavaria, but yeah, same shit. So at this time, Freemasonry was super popular and kind of steadily expanding and spreading throughout Europe in this period, offering attractive alternatives to free thinkers that are hungry for new ideas. And Weishaupt joined up with the Freemasons in order to expand on his desires for enlightenment. However, he found that Freemasonry apparently was a kind of like a limited hangout. He wasn't getting enough from it. You learn some and then you stop and that's it. And now that's kind of the end of the road. And he also found it exceedingly expensive. Apparently, you got to pay dues when you're a Freemason, presumably. And there's also some reports I couldn't really find it exactly as far as hammering down, but a lot of reports were saying that he let his membership lapse, he didn't like your insurance, and then they get all upset and you get pulled over and you get your license taken away and they're like, hey, give your ring back. So basically, what he did used his membership in the Freemasons as a way of drawing recruits to his own little group, and infiltrating them,
I would imagine.
Or people that were still at the bottom that were this is bullshit. Freemasonry was basically not open to his ideas, and so he kind of bounced. So he founded his own secret society, which was basically to have a system of ranks and grades that was just literally based on Freemasonry, but with its own agenda and symbolism behind it, his own little spice of what he thinks is important.
Own clan tag.
Exactly, for real. So on May the 1st, 1776, May Day, which is a important day for lots of people. I'm sure we'll get to that into a different episode. But Adam Weishaupt and 4 other students formed the Perfectibilistas, which taking the owl of Minerva as like their symbol. And in Greek mythology, the little owl, or the Athena Nocta, not to be confused with the Longshanks' Prima Nocta, when Scottish people get married and you get to have with their... Moving on. Traditionally represents or accompanies Athena, the virgin goddess of wisdom. So it's basically a symbol of wisdom. Because of such associations, the bird, often referred to as the owl of Athena or the owl of Minerva, has been used as a symbol of knowledge and wisdom throughout the Western world. Now, we're going to hear about Minerva and owl symbolism later.
A lot of places.
Yeah, a shitload of places, yeah. The members were made up of philosophers and students of law and used aliases with the society in order to hide their identities and agenda from the state and the church, for obvious reasons. Their names were...
Blacked out.
Right?
Redacted.
Massenhausen. These are all really German. I'm sorry if I'm butchering these.
You don't have to pronounce them if you don't want to.
Bauhaus, Merz, and Suter.
Yeah,
But
talk shit on the Germans now.
yeah, right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Talk shit on us now when you can't pronounce these simple names, you stupid American idiot. I need to have time for Stingelaufen. They took on aliases though, in order to hide their identity, and so respectively they became Ajax, Agathon, Tiberius, and Eramus Roderodamus. By 1782, the new organization membership reached 600, but soon its ranks swelled to over 2,500 members,
Damn.
including hundreds of prominent figureheads with all sorts of, illustrious titles like dukes and lords and, semi-high up people with a certain amount of respectability and power attached to their name. This ultra-rapid expansion had also led to the group's breakdown in authority. A bunch of dirty laundry was being aired out in public. Arrogant new members were boasting about how dope and influential and powerful that their new group is, which of course was just fed rumors of conspiracy and corruption and just a bunch of negativity in general.
It's probably not related, but I was going to bring up. Have you ever heard of the third wave experiment? I think that's what it's called. No. So there was a teacher. Who he was teaching about the rise of the Nazis. And the students were why would people go along with such crazy fucking fascism and shit? And so they did an experiment where he had like
desperation,
a
one
specific
word.
part of the class. It was like, part of this club or whatever, and then they had like a secret symbol and whatever, and they had like secret events and whatnot and like that. And
the Stanford experiment.
It went way out of hand. It was sort of related. A lot of people, there's another one like the Blue Eyes Brown Eyes experiment is related.
That sounds very Nazi-esque.
They often get reference to each other.
Word.
But it just kind of showed the power of people being, belonging to exclusive clubs and
going along with basically anything that club's,
and just like they start taking pride in this imaginary made-up club.
Hardcore tribalism.
Yeah, exactly.
That didn't even exist.
Mm-hmm.
So it all goes back to people's propensity to just blindly follow.
Yeah, it's way easier to just accept orders than to actually think for yourself.
That and the power of envy, too.
That kind of reminds me.
Word. Hey, those tribes over there have better fucking food or women. Let's go over there and beat the shit out of them and take their stuff. No, for real, though, right? On a very, primitive level, that's actually, a very, hard to
human trait.
Yeah, dude, it's hard to squash that, unfortunately. Because we think of ourselves as so, and we're just civilized. Yeah, totally. We're just a bunch of semi-conscious apes with machine guns and fucking baseball caps, according to George Carlin. There was some... Yeah, right? Oh, poor guy. I once saw this thing or whatever after he died where this televangelist asshole was just opening line of his fucking video is George... And this was right after he died. He's like, George Carlin is burning in hell right now. I'm like, damn. Click. Goodbye. Go fuck yourself. There was some legitimacy, of course, to these fears of, conspiracy and corruption. Unlike the many secret societies in Bavaria, which were tolerated as long as they kind of stayed out of politics, which is kind of why would you even have a group then? Unless you just let's all get drunk and play ping pong.
You got cool jackets.
Yeah. and great parking spaces. The Order of the Illuminati were actively trying to renew the political culture and fight against what they saw as political corruption and social oppression. So obviously this was something that the church and the state were like, hey, knock it off, you.
Right, of course.
So, of course, more rumors spread that they were interested only in personal wealth and power, and that the number of government officials were secretly members, which they were.
Of course.
Which they were. Ultimately, this culminated into like a major reform period for the group in 1784, where basically they just kind of realized, like, dudes, we're too big, we have too many fucking interests, too many fingers in the pie. You know what I mean? We're also gathering a lot of attention from like negative places. Right. And so this is pretty sure what got them noticed by the authorities is, everyone throwing their weight around, if you were like in...
I'm a member of AAA.
Yeah, exactly. Well, for real, like for instance, if you're like the leader of the government there or whatever, if you're the leader of Bavaria and you want something to get done and then you realize that like your chief of staff belongs to this like secret group where you don't have any idea what they believe or what their intentions are and stuff, obviously you're going to freak out, you know what I mean? And be like, no. You're loyal to me. Right. So the organization also faced rivals from other secret societies, specifically the Rosicrucians, who we just briefly mentioned before.
This really is like fraternities, isn't it?
Oh, dude. Check this out. So the Rosicrucians, who were also active in recruiting and infiltrating the Masonic lodges, like everybody was infiltrating the Masonic lodges because they were the big dogs of the day. The Illuminati is polar opposite to the Christian mystics and staunchy pro-monarchy. So basically what seems like was going on during this time is like a sort of secret society Cold War. You know what I mean? Where everyone's kind of trying to see what's going on with the other group. Members that are in one group are actually members of three groups, kind of secretly and everything, and trying to see who can get kind of ahead of the other guy, and everybody's spying on each other and stuff. Seems like a bunch of bullshit, dude. Like a bunch of like messy, like, I gotta get the fuck out of here. So the Illuminati, along with Freemasonry and other secret societies, were eventually outlawed through an edict by the Bavarian ruler Charles Theodore, with the encouragement of the Catholic Church, of course, in 1784, 1785, and again in 1787. And it was in August of 1787 that the Duke Elector issued his third edict, in which he confirmed that the secret order was now prohibited and imposed the death penalty for membership, scattering the order and driving any members, underground. And the Bavarian police even raided one of their head meeting places and, seized a whole bunch of documents, which they then kind of selectively published, like a sort of anthology of Illuminati papers. Okay. And these papers kind of defended things like suicide, atheism. It detailed plans to form an order of Illuminati specifically for women.
Very enlightened.
Yeah, totally, dude. Like getting down on that. As well as offering instructions for creating invisible ink, which is always fun. Nice. And performing abortions. And so obviously in the eyes of Bavarians, Bavaria's, staunch Roman Catholic.
Yeah, hell no.
Public. Yeah, that was a big no fucking way. I think it's a little crazy though that like it's a little harsh. Yeah, that the effect of the death penalty for these guys, to me, that means exactly, bro. Thank you. They were fucking terrified, dude. Which kind of makes sense because, if certain powers didn't want networking between these powerful people, and who would those people be? Would, bankers, the church, European monarchs, people that need to have other people rely on them in order to maintain their power. Straight up, dude, for real. Yeah, exactly. Because, for instance, if you're a banker or whatever, or even the church or whatever, like, and you're not, no one's borrowing money from you because all these guys are networked together and they have their own fortunes, and you're like, I can get you a cheaper loan or whatever it is, then, these other interests are gonna be like, you're kind of fucking with my bread and butter here, dude. Absolutely. So, if you can't loan out money because you're in their own little group, you're going to lose power and influence, obviously. So, subsequently, a written warning to other nations about the dangers of the Illuminati were written down and transcribed into like a dozen different languages and sent all over Europe to warn the heads of state of this treasonous group. So this book was basically widely read across Europe, more so following the cataclysm of the French Revolution in 1789. So obviously it's like a year later. Wow. Did Europe's kings and bishops basically like a massive favor by, quote, exposing the chaotic face of republicanism. Hysterical religious critics blamed the Order of the Illuminati for the anarchy that was happening in France. And from the 1800s on,
super bloody.
Fucked up, dude. Like, everything was all good remember? Everything was all good for a minute. And then the Jacobins fucking showed up and were like, let's start cutting off heads and fucking make a 9-day work week. And, everybody can go fuck themselves and everybody's just going to be equally broke and therefore we're all equal. 1800 on, the word Illuminati became like a shorthand for secret revolutionary conspiracy behind every act of political unrest or scandal. So, and nowadays this organization,
the Watergate of its time.
Yeah, times like 100, totally. Nowadays this organization has just basically been alleged to conspire to control world affairs by masterminding the events and planting agents in government and corporations in order to gain political power and influence to establish a new world order.
See, that's what's weird is like...
A new world order.
So you have this old, actual society.
Right.
And then people started up again as like they were inspired by it? Or is it like it mutated in some way because it's been underground for a while?
I don't know why they picked that one.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I also don't know why when you say Illuminati... that everybody instantly thinks of the all-seeing eye, which that's a Freemason symbol. You know what I mean? It does have different connotations, but where the fuck did that come from? Yeah. When did that start being a thing where they're like, oh, this organization that's been gone for like 100 years is actually all these other secret groups working together behind the scenes in this giant monolithic, like dark, shadowy cabal of, control freaks.
Yeah.
Masters of the universe.
Yeah. So, or aliens, depending on who you believe.
Yeah, exactly. Totally. So, I mean, it's one of those things, it's like, it's kind of spurious. You don't really know exactly where it came from. And I looked a bunch, dude, and there's no concrete thing of like, oh, this is where it came back. For real, dude. Even with the massive tool of the internet, we're just like, I don't fucking know, dude. Like, it's definitely interesting.
Yeah.
Very.
So, take it, Andy.
Take it hard.
What I was looking into, so... It's the Skull and Bone.
The Bone.
The Skull and Bone Society, which was founded in 1832 after a dispute among some debating societies in Yale, Lanonia Brothers in Unity, and the Calliopean Society over that season's 5 Beta Kappa Awards. So Skull and Bones was founded as the result of 2 conflicting societies' views over
how things should be run, kind of, on campus.
The awards for that year, because the Phi Beta Kappa sorority fraternity had awards going on.
So like
very petty.
I was just gonna say so they were like upset that Charleston over there.
Finish in a minute.
Yeah, right.
But these guys over here at the greatest video of all time.
Yeah, finish in a minute. But Beyonce should have won that.
Yeah.
That's hilarious. So like they were kind of fighting over like who should have gotten the like perfect attendance award or like
something along that vein. I mean, yeah, very petty.
Tommy can drink way more than the other guy's fucking big fat party animal. He should have gotten the award.
And they get to wear togas.
Yeah, right. Totally. This is bullshit.
So the founders, we got William Huntington Russell and Alfonso Taft.
Yes.
The Order of the Skull and Bones. The first senior members included Russell, Taft, and 12 other members. Some notable members, William Howard Taft, actually.
President.
George H.W. and George W.
Mm-hmm. Gog and Magog.
Yes.
That's their names. Weird.
Skull and Bones selects new members among students every spring as part of Yale University's Tap Day and has done so since 1879.
It picks like 15 new members from the senior... presumably
15,
the senior graduating group, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, 15 new members every spring at a Tap Day or Tap Night.
Tap Night's my favorite. It's my boogie.
Yeah, I prefer Tap
Night.
Since the society's inclusion of women in the early 1990s.
Just a little random fact. You know who's an honorary member?
Who?
Hillary Clinton. Well done, Marcus.
She's honorary.
You dog. Yeah.
So she was okay.
I don't think she went. Did she go to Yale? I should know this.
So, I don't
really
know.
One of the
she went to one of those Ivy. Exactly, dude. Yeah, totally. riding that Rhodes Scholarship, no doubt. Carnegie Scholarship. One of those fucking assholes with scholarships.
Skull and Bones. So the word taps, where that word comes from, tap day or tap night.
It's not dancing?
It's from the beer
No,
cake.
it's not.
See, that's another thing I was going to think of, right?
Well, you think, fraternity, tap, like keg. Like,
That's exactly what I was thinking. Tap night, bro! You're not going to tap night?
Becky's gonna be there.
Yeah, exactly, right? Dude, I'm going to do a keg stand so hardcore, bro. You don't even know. I've been practicing.
They tap those that it views as campus leaders.
Oh, duh, dude. So like a keg to
Right.
tap into the sweet, creamy goodness of within. You got to tap people that are like that could be useful to your organization.
Exactly.
Yep. Cool.
So instead of tapping a keg, you're tapping
Into the person's potential to bring on for your that's awesome. I like that. Okay.
And talking about symbols, so it's right there in its name, skull and bones.
Totally.
The skull and crossbones with a number beneath it.
What's that number, Marcus? Come on, dog.
God, off the top of my head, you put me on the spot.
You didn't watch any of the
Yes, I watched the movie a long time ago.
No, the presidential debates between John Kerry and George W. Bush. Remember when they were
I
like,
wasn't paying attention to politics.
yeah, exactly. Or one of the I think it was like Chris Hemsworth, one of those fucking political pundits was like, aren't you guys in like the same group? So isn't it like a secret society? So secret that can't even be spoken about? 322? Does that number mean anything to you? I didn't mean to steal your thunder there, brother.
No, that's okay. But it is 322. The number is generally taken to refer to the year 322 BC of the death of the Greek orator Demosthenes.
Okay.
Can you pronounce that?
I didn't know that. Demosthenes.
Demosthenes.
I don't fucking speak Greek.
A turning point in the transformation of ancient Athens from democracy to plutocracy. The society's clubhouse is a monumental brownstone building in New Haven called the Tomb.
Yes, it looks like a fucking tomb.
Yes, originally it was built in 1856. The tomb has doubled in size, or it was doubled in size in 1903, and has since been further enlarged upon. I mean, it's a very like secret organization, but it's
from what you were saying though, it sounds like it's like a pre-secret organization. Like when you go to school and you go to this organization, and then when you're done, you go to like maybe the other organizations or whatever.
Yeah,
like after you've networked and had your,
it's almost like like an organization within an organization, which can kind of that's kind of a common theme of what we've been talking about tonight. Is an example
plans within plans.
Yeah, the Illuminati was, it had its roots in the Freemasons.
Totally,
right.
Totally. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Just like this one probably has its roots in other like.
But the funny thing is about Skull and Bones is it's strictly a college based. Like, it does not branch out.
No, it stays there, right?
Yeah, it's not.
That's like their base of operation, like.
And lastly, what I kind of liked about, not liked, but what I found interesting, I guess, about Skull and Bones. Yeah, it's always kept its affairs secret, but for many years it's publicized its membership roster. Some new members are high achieving students, while others are descendants of socially prominent families.
That's interesting.
I was gonna say, why would they release the roster? Like, is that something that they would have to do, or maybe it's just like something that they're like, "Ha! Look who's in our group.
Well,
important, powerful people. Don't you want to join?"
Because if you have it depends on how official, I guess, they are. Because if the school wanted to know about that sort of thing, and they were going to get in there and shut it down, they'd maybe try to be as transparent as they could,
right? In order to not kind of get on the radar of the dean.
Right, something like that.
Or, whatever the authorities.
Just a theory.
Totally.
To be less scary to people.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. To like release info and say like, look, it's not, we know you've heard of a lot of, kind of weird
not a child
things.
molestation ring.
It's totally not, dude. We definitely don't dig up and desecrate fucking bones or anything. Oh wait, we totally did. We definitely aren't like a secret society that is involved with like really weird perverted shit. Okay, they definitely are that thing. But yeah, I know what you're saying. I get what you're saying.
I was actually reading about Freemasons and Illuminati and Skull and Bones last night. You know, as part
In
of
a rabbit hole.
Yeah, I was kind of going down a rabbit hole, and I was reading on Reddit the AMAs,
right?
The Ask Me Anythings.
Nice.
A common thing that I found out about these societies is that they're not, to the uninitiated. There's a lot of pomp surrounding. them.
Of course, totally.
But really, it's just like dudes just meeting
hanging
out,
out.
Totally. Yeah.
drinking beer,
That's
going to dinner.
what I feel like a lot of these things are actually. Like, I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm sure there are really dark, insidious groups. Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
But for the most part, dude, if we know about it and it's heavily in the pop culture, chances are, at least on like the surface level of like the initiates and like the medium ups, there's just a bunch of dudes getting together, fucking networking and
and especially if you have something like the Freemasons, for example, that has such a strong history of just being secretive in general.
Totally.
You got to.
It's like expected. Yeah, exactly. Yep.
Yeah.
And,
which is funny because when you fill in the gaps and you get things like wrong, the people that do know shit kind of look back and kind of laugh and be like, oh, look what they think we believe. Like, that's silly.
Yeah.
And another thing too that I found interesting is these secret societies. They have these rituals, I guess, where could be nefarious.
Looks weird.
On these ask me anythings that I've been reading on Reddit is. It's not so much what the rituals are themselves, but it's the fact they do these things not because of the importance of the rituals themselves,
but because they're just rituals traditional rituals that they do.
They want to know that their members are able to be trustworthy.
Of course, of course. You got to give out some things in order to have them trust. If you're going to form these bonds, you need trust. In order to have trust, you need to know something of the other person that presumably you don't want anybody else to know.
So it's not so much about the content of the rituals themselves, but it's
what you get out of it.
The actual action of you being able to keep a secret.
Totally.
Right.
So it's
Speaking of that, do you have you when you in your investigative work? Did you read anything about some of the rituals that involve this bonding between bonesmen? Giggity.
Do they dock?
Yeah, exactly. That's presumably what I would. But apparently, and this is a very common, widely held view, it's even semi-portrayed in a bunch of different like movies and the like. But basically, new initiates have to climb inside of a coffin naked with a little red ribbon tied around their wiener and basically jack it while divulge your like secrets, your deepest fears, your sexual proclivities, like all the things that you would never fucking tell anybody, basically, except for like your lover or whatever. And while everyone, like the nobles and the other initiates, the elders and stuff, all are around you watching, presumably. And this, presumably, again, is to have dirt on somebody, presumably, so that way, I'm saying presumably a lot, I apologize.
Allegedly.
Exactly. So that hypothetically, when you've created this networking, this bond, and you go out into the world, and let's say you get a job at like a corporation or whatever, and you end up meeting your boss, who you were like, oh shit, I know you. I remember you. I'm not going to talk about what happened, but you and I, we have the eye. You and I know, a little wink, wink, nudge, nudge. You're going to help me. I'm going to help you. Whatever you want, I want, because we're bonesmen and fucking, we'll always watch each other's back. And I know you will never fuck me because I'll tell you about that one time when you did something super fucked up or whatever, and everyone's going to know about it.
Right.
That's crazy.
That's presumably like a trust based on like humiliation and shame and disgust and all this
mutual humiliation.
Yes, dude. And it's like fucked, but it totally makes sense. Like, you know what I mean? So as weird as it sounds about all that shit that I just talked about, the concept of it is totally sound. Yeah. You know what I mean? Having dirt on somebody that
goes back to what Andy was saying.
Exactly, dude. And I don't know exactly if any of that's obviously true, but like other things too going where like they wrestle in like mud, or some have said sometimes it's like piss and feces and stuff that they're wrestling for some like representation of something. But there's actually a good scene in the movie The Good Shepherd with Matt Damon. And the character in that scene is like all upset. He's just like, Jesus, dude, like, I don't want to be doing this. And his buddy's kind of like, dude, look, like, nobody likes to do this, but it's just kind of what we have to do. And nobody even really knows why we do all these like rituals and ceremonies. What we just do. It's just kind of one of those things, you know?
And again, I feel like that sort of feeds into the, I guess, public perception of whatever these societies are, and that, you know, it could be for various reasons just to make it seem cool and or nefarious and or secretive and or worth it. Like, man, it's gonna be a reason I'm
right. Why would I do this or whatever? And that's presumably because the rewards are far greater than if you don't do it.
Maybe even just to scare off people to be like, I don't want to do that.
Yeah, for real, dude.
Well,
like,
we wouldn't want you in our organization.
Exactly.
Anyway.
If you can't crawl through shit, dude, we don't want you fucking in our organization. Which, to be honest, like, I totally understand that, dude. Like, so brief little thing I wanted to mention on your and some of your research that you did. Is there a governmental group that kind of pops its head up in the Skull and Bones fraternity or whatever here and there, like a government group that they're highly connected to or something like that?
Is this like a definitive link, or is this sort of a speculative?
You know,
it's almost definitive. Like, if you just look at the members and then look what those members go on to do, you're like, huh.
It's a very strong coincidence.
Yes, exactly.
Yes. Not, I didn't find like any... I know what you're alluding to.
Okay.
It's a lot like presidents, you know, they
presidents and CIA members.
And CIA, yes.
Hardcore like intelligence agency groups are into like recruiting Skull and Bones members for some reason, dude. I don't know why them specifically.
It could be sort of, again, just that trust thing. You know,
good call. Yeah, they need loyalty, trust. Yeah, good call.
Especially if you're going to be if you're caught and you're going to be tortured or something.
It goes back to that Hiram Abiff thing of like, are you going to give up the information or whatever, even though your life is on the line? And if the answer is no, then we want you in our group. Did you come across kind of how big this group is?
You know, it's not.
I'm sure different things will say different, numbers, but
that's the thing that I was having some, I guess, difficulty.
So that is this is like constrained to basically like those old Ivy League type of schools, or is it specifically?
Well, no,
Yale.
Specifically Yale. Yes, specifically Yale, and specifically Skull and Bones. What I read is that there's over 900 members. Now,
over 9,000.
No,
like
100. 900. Sorry.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Wait,
apparently current 900 current. Like, well,
at any given time.
Well, once you're a Bones, then you're
graduate.
Skull and Bones to the end, dog.
Sure.
So,
you can never not be.
And so, when they say 900 members worldwide, I don't know if that means that like they left there and now they're in a different country,
that's what's weird is like, how can you have an honorary Bonesman?
Really like having Hillary be one.
Yeah, like.
Well, it's the same with like Freemasons. Like, there's a lot of people that became honorary Freemasons. They're just like. Here,
we like this
you
guy.
be exactly. Like, do you know that Sammy Davis Jr. was he was the dude from the Rat Pack, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Do you know that he was an honorary member of the Church of Satan?
No, I didn't know.
Right? Weird, huh?
Did he like accept that?
Yeah. Anton LaVey, I think, was the guy who was like, "Hey, bro, you like the cut of your jib? Want to be a Satanist?" And he's like, "Fuck yeah." So for some reason,
enough white people hate me already.
For real, right? Totally. Let's just add one more thing for fucking people to get like upset about for no reason.
That actually sounds like something Sammy Davis would do just for that reason.
Yeah, totally. Well, I mean, to be honest, like really, if anybody asks to kind of be a member of your group or whatever, like, I mean, just because the name says something doesn't necessarily mean that like, you know, whatever preconceived notions are.
Yeah, and what do most of the secret societies get immediately associated with but Satan?
Satanism. Yeah. I was just going to say that a lot of offshoots of Skull and Bones are found on campuses all over the United States, and that would be Scroll and Key or Corpse and Coffin. Have you ever heard of any of those guys? But yeah, if you guys ever want to kind of see any of that's like Hollywoodized, I highly recommend watching The Good Shepherd. It's about like a CIA initiative that has to go through.
I had no idea that's what that was about.
Dude, it's good. It's got what's her name in it too? That skinny chick. Who was also randomly in the CFR for a minute. Angelina Jolie.
Yeah,
Angelina Jolie was in the CFR.
Look that shit up, homie. Weird, right? She was like an
honorary member.
Yeah, exactly, right, dude. For real. Like the cut of your jib. So, yeah, who knows? Fucking.
You look a little Russian. Let's put you in.
Right, totally. Good enough.
But what you're saying though, as far as the CIA, that's And one of the theories, that's definitely one of the more like less substantiated ones.
Yeah,
you know?
totally.
But
well,
it's
again,
one
there's
of the
no
most interesting.
Yeah, totally. There's no like direct correlation,
Right.
except for the fact that you see some members or whatever eventually going into like prominent positions within the CIA. Like George H.W. Bush was fucking head of the fucking CIA way before he became president or even vice president. Presumably, he got noticed by the agency while he was at Yale or whatever. So. And I know I mentioned too a little random thing that they've been busted before. Skull and Bones have had a handful of scandals here and there. One of which involved a bunch of the members going and digging up and desecrating the grave of Geronimo and bringing back the fucking skull and putting it up in a glass display case next to like
What is this?
You can look it up right now, but
I wouldn't go anywhere near doing something
me
like
neither,
that,
dude. Are you
That's
kidding?
some
I wouldn't even
bad
touch it.
juju.
Yes,
That is
dude.
horrible juju.
You guys are tripping. Like you are out of your fuck. I can't fucking smoke a finger. Like you guys are out of your mind, dude. So yeah, I want to say. Well, it was. I think it was during. I want to say Prescott Bush's time there because I think he was there too. I think all three of the. Well, I mean, there's more Bushes than that, like Jeb Bush and all those other fucking Jeb Bush. Yeah, I'm pretty sure those three dudes, Poppy. And and his dad and then his son also went, I'm pretty sure. And so,
Wow.
yeah, crazy. So the last group I wanted to discuss is also pretty well known, and that's the Bohemian Club, also known as the Bohemian Grove. Basically, it's a men's only summer camp for heathens, basically, high up political like people and such. So every year in the redwood forests of Sonoma County, which is in the North Bay,
Beautiful
San Francisco.
area, by the way.
Gorgeous.
Yes.
My brother actually used to live up in Petaluma, which is just south of
nice.
Santa Rosa, which is right in the same area or whatever, which is crazy because
West Coast is the best coast.
straight up, dude. And what's funny is that like when I was living in San Francisco and kind of having my like conspiratorial awakening of like crazy shit that's going on in the world, we found out about the Bohemian Grove because obviously it's so close. And, there's a lot of weird shit going on there.
Membership there.
Yeah, but then, that they wanted all these additional, like, charges and money. And then, they wouldn't let me use the steam room and I have to wear a shirt when I jog. And this is nonsense, but...
Wi-Fi wasn't included.
And it's just like, how am I supposed to work out in these conditions? When I was living in San Francisco and stuff, hanging out with my buddies, going down rabbit holes of fucking YouTube and, like, checking this stuff out and just, 17 hours of straight fucking YouTube. A buddy of mine... was starting to date this chick and we were just kind of getting to know her and stuff like that, and she was discussing the fact that she had this job coming up because it was approaching the summer, and she didn't have a job for the rest of the year, but during the summer she had a brief job.
Okay.
And she was like, we were asking her basically about like, well, what job is this? She's like, so there's like this group of people that kind of get together out in the forest and stuff, and there's like this compound out there, and basically just like serve drinks and get my butt pinched by like, a bunch of old dudes that are like, hey, good looking, fucking come here with that scotch. Give me another fucking cigar. And, we have to be off the campus at a certain time and stuff like that. And women aren't allowed past 10 and all this like weird rules and stuff. And dude, like as she's like describing this, me and two of my buddies is like jaws are on the floor as like we're turning to each other and we're like, and like we're looking at my buddy Tyler, and he like kind of like he's like, I got this, guys, and kind of like leans over to the chick. He's like, where exactly is that? And she's like, yeah, up in Sonoma, and da da da. And we're just like, guys, that's the fucking Bohemian Grove, dude. She fucking works at the Bohemian Grove, dog. Ask her to get us in there and fucking, of course, no way. But we just thought that was super crazy. We're just like, no way, we know somebody. Have you ever seen any crazy shit? And she's like, nah, like blah blah blah. But they get tipped insanely well.
I would imagine.
Insanely well. So obviously, there's probably an era of like, hey, don't say shit if you want to come back here next year. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's interesting that they just have Joe Schmoes.
Yeah, totally. The local townspeople, kids, dude. 16, 17, 18, 19, fucking young adults.
Well, if that's the case, then, that could mean that, like, there's really not
all that much
Right,
crazy.
go back to the transparency thing.
For sure. Although I will say this, is that not only are women supposed to be gone by
But
10.
there are closed doors there.
Yes, and also the men who aren't part of the group have to be gone by 2. So
AM?
presumably, yes, 2
Oh, okay.
a.m. So presumably, if there was any nefarious shit going on there, It would be at the wee hours of the morning, presumably.
Yeah, but could you imagine all those old guys staying up that late?
Good call. I never really thought about that. Right? Henry Kissinger getting all like sleepy-eyed. How much longer is this going to take?
You haven't touched your dessert yet, sir.
Right, totally. Kissinger, you eat that fucking Jell-O so we can get out of here, right? All right. Right, all the presidents and ex-presidents and stuff. Come on, Henry, hurry up, man. I want to go for the fucking lily pond. Got my water wings on. I'm ready to go. Oh, George. So, yeah, getting back to it.
We went way off there.
I'm sorry. Well, it was fun. It was all fun.
It's the end of the podcast.
Exactly, dude. Come on, we gotta loosen up a little bit. So, this exclusive club plays host for 2 weeks in late June and early July to an illustrious guest list of a variable, who's who of actors, musicians, government officials, politicians, and even presidents, past and future. So some of the historical events surrounding it is the club.
Did you just say past and future?
Yes.
Presidents?
Yes.
Ah.
So,
Can you explain
other people. So the only one that I'm really aware of right now, and I should have probably done more research, but presidential candidate from Texas, Rick Perry, from back in the day before Bush 2 won his first term. I'm pulling all this from my memory, from the memory hole. But he was a hardcore political presidential candidate until he hit some scandalous shit that happened with like the HPV vaccine or whatever, where he he fucking recommended a whole bunch of teenage girls to get it or whatever in some kind of like campaign ad thing or whatever, and then they kind of find out, whoops, that shit causes cervical cancer. Yeah. And that kind of caused him, a lot of people think that caused him the election or whatever. Though I will say, Bush 2 also was present several years before, or at least a couple of years before he became president, and he was there with his dad, Poppy, freaking George Bush 1. And he was apparently said to like certain members or whatever, like, this is my son George. He can make a hell of a president someday. Which, of course, you could just say that or whatever. But a lot of people took that as like so you want him to be president. Like, make this happen if you can, kind of a thing. Yeah. You know what I mean?
Yeah, when somebody like that starts talking about stuff.
Yeah, you don't just ignore what they say. You're just like, oh, okay, you want this to happen. Okay, let me jot this down real quick.
Right.
So the club began in 1872 in San Francisco, but moved to the Grove in Sonoma in 1878. So this is a relatively old, at least 100 years old group. And so around 100 original members of like writers and musicians and actors began as sort of like a send-off party for one of the main members named Henry Harry Edwards. And it then became like a yearly tradition after that. Before all the symbolism and ritual and stuff, it was just a bunch of like dudes in the woods camping, smoking heroin, because that was totally allowed back then still.
It was allowed.
Before the government came down and put regulations on us. So in 1893, though, it began renting from the owner of the land. And then finally in 1899, just a few years later, the group purchased the property. And then every year after that, members would basically pool together money to buy the surrounding lands. Nice. And eventually the Grove became what it is today, which is over 2,500 acres of like pristine redwood.
Expensive ass
fuck yeah. In California, dude, you're tripping. What they do is, their motto is, weaving spiders come not here. Which is at the arch on the entrance of the camp, which kind of has, I guess, like a bunch of meanings, presumably. I guess if I had to like kind of translate that would mean like, don't try to be bigger than your boots or whatever, as it were. You know what I mean? Don't try to think you're the bad motherfucker, the big swinging dick on the property. But I mean, because this is a secret society, who the fuck knows what it means? So they kind of broke it up into two groups, at least two groups that we know of. Again, this is all secrety shit. Men of talent, which are the artists, the people that like create the performances and bring all the fun. And then men of use, which presumably are the financiers, people who pay for everything. Yeah, exactly. People who can't create art but have lots of money. So this is obviously a symbiotic relationship that kind of formed. And the camp is typical in its setup, kind of like other summer camps where it has like 100 plus bunkhouses. And presumably they're getting nicer as, you rise up in the ranks or whatever, as far as like, I'm sure like Bush and Henry Kissinger are not like sitting in, like literally
Cots.
bunk beds and cots and shit in some like shitty little like, spider infested room. You know what I mean? Although that would be hilarious, like watching them get all up or whatever. Lights out, everybody. See y'all in the morning. This is going to be fun. So a half dozen amphitheaters, concert halls, stages, and lecterns used for obviously lectures and plays, filled with grand pageantry, costumes, and even pyrotechnics. So speaking of that, some of the rituals and symbols that they kind of use, one of them is the ritualistic pageant is called the cremation of care. Have any of you guys ever heard of that?
Cremation of care.
Yeah, when you were talking about Ron Johnson, sorry.
Ronson.
Right? Ron Johnson. I know.
Ron Johnson.
Ron Johnson.
Long John.
That fucking cat, dude. Did you hear anything about the cremation of care when you came across Ron?
I know that
Johnson's?
he's done a bunch of he did like a whole series on secret societies, and
He did a documentary, well, like a short thing or whatever with Alex Jones.
Right.
Freaking him and Alex Jones broke into the fucking Bohemian Grove and took those iconic
Why
videos.
am I not surprised?
I know, right? Totally.
Alex Jones
Right?
fucking broke into that.
Hey man, I'm just here to hang out. What's going on? Where's the cremation of care at?
Damn it.
It's a good documentary, and it's kind of funny because they both kind of have different like opinions of what was going on. Where Ron Johnson was very like laid back and very like, oh, this is no big deal, and Alex Jones was like, holy fucking shit, like, oh, I gotta get out of here. They're gonna kill me. They know. The cremation of care is a ceremony that takes place at the edge of the lake. It takes place at the foot of a 40-foot stone owl shrine.
Oh, right. Okay.
40-foot stone owl?
Yes, it's
Damn,
massive,
I wonder
dude.
how much that thing weighs.
Dude, for real. And that's where those iconic, the iconic video
Right.
that was taken or whatever, where Alex Jones presumably had like the hidden fucking camera, and
That's
you see this
right.
really
That's right.
weird, dark,
Yeah, I remember. Yeah.
scary fucking like,
Looks like a
cults.
KKK meeting.
Yes, dude, for real, dude, with like fire and these weird loud voices of like of these ancient like sounding
Like
like
they're praying to some kind of crazy
weird,
creature.
yeah, I spit on your fire, and like loud fucking noises and making everybody like freaking out. And I guess when this whole thing was happening, like Alex Jones was just shitting himself, going like, "Oh my god, dear Lord Almighty!" This
They're actually
40
all
foot.
lizard people.
Well, you're not supposed to say that right away, dude.
sorry,
You got to
sorry,
lead into
sorry.
it. You can't just drop it on there. Foreplay, Marcus. Foreplay. This stone owl shrine is presumably named Moloch. And that's the biblical name of the Canaanite god associated with child sacrifice. The Canaanite gods had this like bull, this giant bull statue that you would place fire underneath it. Rabbinical traditions depict Moloch as a bronze statue heated with fire so the victims would be thrown in. And these stories match reports of Greco-Roman authors talking about child sacrifice in Carthage to a god named Baal, or Saturn, like the chief god or whatever, that was also super into child sacrifices. Now this is
That's my thing.
important. It's my thing. It's what I do. It's what I do on weekends. Now this is important because the cremation of care presumably is a mock child sacrifice. Mock child sacrifice. Unless after 2 o'clock and you get deep into the woods and then they're like, hey, what's up with these fucking orphans that we picked up? But during this extravagant ceremony, basically, it's believed that the initiates perform a mock sacrifice of a child, burning an effigy, right?
Right.
Which is like a creation of putting all of your like thoughts and cares and emotions and stuff like that into like a physical object.
Right.
Which is supposedly, again, it represents care. So it could be interpreted as a simple, like I said, pent up release of like the year of like, just shedding. Like, I don't give a fuck, dude. Okay, let's get on with the partying.
Right.
Or it could be the shedding of one's views of morality.
That's what it struck me.
That's what it sounds like to me, because if you think about if you need to achieve something really important, and you're being held back by quote unquote morality, yeah, totally, that's going to prevent you from doing the thing you need to do. It's like it's the Thanos method, basically, of like, hey, the ends justify the means kind of a thing.
I ignored my destiny once.
Right, exactly, dude.
I mean, if you gotta, sacrifice for your children, make an omelet.
Right, dude, to make a baby omelet. So like much like the burning of the effigy kind of reminds me of like Burning Man. It's the exact same thing. It's the same pagan like ritual of like, okay, we're gonna put up the man who represents all these different things, and we're gonna burn that motherfucker to the ground because now we're gonna start a new year, fresh new ideas, fresh new whatnot. It kind of reminds me of the Mr. Burns joke where he's talking to the kids about like how to be successful in business, where he's like, friends, family, religion. These are the 3 demons you must slay in order to be successful at business. That's kind of what it reminds me about. So, just a little side note. Every year, 80,000 kids go missing in California. And out of those, approximately 2,500 are like serious cases that are like not involving runaways and stuff, like abductions and suspicious, circumstances and sightings and stuff. Make of that what you will. I'm not saying anything. I actually don't really necessarily believe that they fucking kill people there, but it's something that we should put in there. So again, this is a kind of a thing where people kind of get upset at the people there. Because again, like a lot of these people and a lot of like naysayers like, hey, leave them alone. You know, there's a bunch of rich people partying and stuff and peeing on trees. And, you know, like what Bill Clinton said when they're like, are you part of the Bohemian Grove? He's like, oh man, you mean like all those rich Republicans out there rubbing their dicks up on trees and stuff? I don't think he actually said that. I think he said like getting naked out in trees or something, but something along those lines. But the reason why some people get kind of like upset about all these powerful people getting together and partying, even though presumably you just be like, you know, hey, they're just trying to release some pent up stuff. And I can't do this while I'm in office. You know what I mean? Because I can't be seen getting bloated, you know, while I have, you know, the economy on my mind. You know what I mean? But again, just to harken back to the Logan Act, that's why a lot of people are like, well, what are you big business you guys doing meeting here? Some of you guys are still on the books or whatever. You're not really supposed to be there. So some of the members that have been a part of the Bohemian Grove, again, are just a freaking who's who, man. So we got Herbert Hoover, Ford, Reagan, all the Bushes, you know, Jeb, freaking Poppy, freaking George, Colin Powell, Dick Cheney, the Rockefellers, the DuPonts, the Koch brothers. They're always there. Randomly, Bing Crosby.
Okay.
Clint Eastwood. Yeah, again, Clint Eastwood. And Mark Twain, of all people or whatever. And I already mentioned Rick Perry, the Texas governor. You know, and again, like a veritable who's who of chiefs of staff, you know, state-sponsored, high-ranking military, all those kinds of people all end up going to the Grove every year. And so a lot of people are not sure if these are just rich people out there partying or if actual policy is being discussed. Thank you. Took the words out of my mouth. Thank you. And I'm going to have a bunch of links at the bottom of these with videos, sound clips of Nixon talking in those secret tapes that he had or whatever, talking about you know, I went to the Bohemian Grove and it was just the faggiest goddamn thing I had ever seen. Which is super hilarious
was
coming
that
from
Nixon or was that Doc Brown?
Well, I mean, they were both there, so I mean, you know, they were buddies. They were in the same bunk, so yeah. Marty! The goddamn San Franciscans, Marty. I'm also going to include a link to both the Vanity Fair and I Spy magazine articles that kind of discuss about it, where you get to see fucking Kissinger in like a hula skirt and like coconut tit bras and dancing, doing some weird like play with George Bush as like a frog.
Inside every Republican is a deep-seated Democrat.
Right, dude? Dying to
That's
get
all
out.
it is, really.
Screaming to get out. So I guess that wraps it up for freaking secret societies. Again, there's so many. And these are just a handful of like the heavy hitters that we thought were interesting for you guys.
So, if that wraps up phase 2, let's go into
phase 3.
Begin. So, deep fakes.
Yeah, the technology aspect that we're going to be talking about today, Marcus?
Deep fakes.
What the fuck is a deep fake?
Deep fakes is Photoshop on crack. you've probably heard of circumstances where people will fake a photograph of like, oh, this is this guy smoking marijuana, or this guy, I don't know, doing with a mistress or something, or, you know.
Getting out of a car and flashing their hoo-ha.
Right.
No, wait, that was a real thing. Sorry.
Basically, deepfakes is when you, it's sort of like that same principle.
That concept,
but,
yeah.
But powered by newer technology. So
nanotechnology.
not quite.
That's how it's pronounced, Marcus.
So you feed like an AI, basically an algorithm, machine learning sort of thing. You feed it a bunch of images of a person's face.
Some software.
Right. Ideally from different angles and different lightings and whatnot.
Right. Hopefully close-ups on their mouth.
Right, exactly. So so that you can fake a copy of a person's face. Even in motion. This is crazy enough to do it in motion.
It's terrifying.
So, like, you guys, have seen Rogue One, Peter Cushing, Grand Moff Tarkin. Like, he obviously passed away before that movie.
Yes.
But they used, like, a dude that has his same physique and sort of could talk sort of like him.
So they can graft his image over him, basically.
And they've done it in other movies, like Paul Walker, that they put him in the last Fast and Furious movie because they used his brother, and then they composited his face onto it digitally. Right, I'm just trying to give a real-world example so you can maybe tie it in.
Totally.
If you want to see a copy of an example of this, a really good one, Jordan Peele, I'm sure you've seen his Obama impersonation. Pretty good.
Yeah.
He did a video demonstrating this kind of shit where he basically made Obama say a bunch of crazy things. And you're looking at it and you're like, especially if you don't know the context, you're like, did I just, like, why is this not national news? Like, what the hell did I just watch?
When he was talking about all these horrible things that he did, like,
right.
Oh, I remember that one time when I picked up a woman and beat her senseless.
Just like I said,
Jesus, Obama.
Photoshop on crack. Like, people will use this for, creating fake news stories or propaganda or even sometimes, like, revenge porn. Or crimes, even like faking crimes, things like that,
or even having like heads of industry or corporations saying some like mind-blowing shit that would cause the markets to fucking tank in like a second before it can be verified that, hey, I actually didn't say that.
The applications could be devastating, especially when the technology gets even better and you have automated speech generation takes off even further.
Wow!
Like if you've ever listened, I think it was last year, Google's done some pretty crazy work in the field of getting robots to sound a lot more human, where they have like
so that's important.
They have like an assistant, like their version of Siri, the Google Assistant, making appointments for people. They're like calling up a restaurant and like, hey, I'm thinking about making a reservation.
Do we really need that?
Well, yeah, they've
we gotten so lazy that
of like what a human would sound like.
Sounds pretty convincing. So
thank you for giving me a rabbit hole.
Right, dude, terrifying rabbit hole to go down.
Yeah, I know. So. And just like with any other kind of technology, like the more it gets used, the better the tech gets. And celebrities or public figures, particularly actors, would be at the most risk of this because there's so much source material for them to grab from.
Oh my God, right? Because they've made 1,000 statements and said so many different sound bites. Totally.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Endless material.
Yeah, and not only that, but like if you composite, I'm sure you've seen videos like where people will edit things to make it sound like they're saying different things, like Brian Williams doing fucking gin and juice.
Yeah, really? Oh,
yeah.
I haven't seen that. It's hilarious.
Yeah.
Sipping on gin and juice.
So, like I was saying, actors are particularly at risk for this sorts of things. Like, I don't want to name names to popularize this sort of thing because it's a pretty terrible thing to do, but there's a pretty popular celebrity who had one of these, like, porn type of videos generated of her, whatever. So... it can be pretty scary, especially like I said, when you get really smart people and really good technology together to create some sort of crazy